Hey guys, it is May the 29th, 2025, and I hope everybody's been having a wonderful day so far today. The reason I'm inside is it is pouring raining outside, and I wouldn't be surprised if you don't hear a bunch of thunder, see some flashes of lightning while I do this video today. It, like, out of nowhere, just started raining cats and dogs, and I mean, like, lightning started clapping. Like, out of nowhere, it just got crazy outside. When I checked the weather this morning, it was like a 30 or 40% chance of rain this afternoon, and that was supposed to be at like 5 o'clock. I think it's like 3:30 in the afternoon or something like that right now, but I got up this morning and took my van to go get the oil changed. I needed to get it done really, really bad. So I went ahead and did that, and came back home, started cutting my grass, and was like, you know, I can get this stuff done while I'm already up moving around this morning, and got all that stuff knocked out. And like literally the moment that I came in the house, it just started pouring rain outside. So I went ahead and took my van and drove it up to the end of my driveway and parked it up by the road, and just walked home just a second ago. I wanted to make sure that I could get my van in and out of here. I haven't been able to drive it for like the past week or so because of all the rain that we've had. So I was like, the heck with this. I'm getting my van up here. I'm parking it by the road, and I just walked back and it was just pouring rain on me. But anyway, that's been my day today, and I'm glad that I was able to get all my stuff accomplished before the rain started. At least I was able to get my grass cut and get the oil change, like I said, in the van, and all that stuff done. But anyway, while I was cutting the grass today, I was just thinking about what I wanted to talk about in today's video, and I thought about a bunch of different topics, but this one thought came to mind, and I was watching, as a matter of fact, I was watching Intervention yesterday, and this idea came from watching that show, and they were talking about how this gentleman would go around stealing up all of his kids' change in order to buy booze. And this guy was like, he was married, he was a firefighter, and what had ended up happening is he had got one of his buddies in the fire department had gotten stuck in a house and fell through the floor. And the guy, he was they're, you know, both were firefighters. Well, he went back in the house and saved and rescued his friend from this house fire they had fallen through the floor in. And I guess whatever happened when he went in there to save his friend, I guess it was very traumatic for him. And he started drinking really heavily after that happened. And from that point forward, you know, this guy's married, he's got kids and all this stuff. And he just started going downhill. You know, he was just drinking. And you guys know, I mean, drinking is not cheap. Now, there are other substances that cost more money than alcohol. But it's still not cheap, especially if you're drinking every single day. And, you know, it can get to the point where, you know, we'll do desperate things sometimes in order to, you know, get the shakes to go away or get the DTs to go away and not to be in withdrawal. You know, sometimes we wake up in the morning and, you know, we feel like crap. We're completely hungover. Our hands are shaking. You know, we feel like you're going to throw up. You know, you just feel horrible. And if you're anything like me, the hair of the dog was the best remedy to get the hangover to go away. And sometimes you wake up the next morning and you realize you don't have any money. So, you know, what do you do in order to get, you know, the shakes to go away? Well, you've got to come up with some kind of a plan. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, is the extreme measures that we'll take sometimes in order to, you know, get our hands on our booze, or, you know, maybe to buy a lottery ticket, or, you know, to acquire our other substance, whatever it may be, you know, some kind of substance. No matter what it is, you know, we will take extreme measures sometimes in order to acquire what we need. And like I said, that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I guess, I'll just start for myself. I've spoken about this many, many times, but, I could not just go to the store and use our joint debit card, my wife and my debit card, to go purchase alcohol at the liquor store or at any store. Because, it had gotten to the point where if I went and used our debit card, let's say I went to the grocery store, my wife would ask to see receipts. Because of the things that I had done in the past, because I had taken every measure that I could to get my hands on my booze. I'd tell my wife, she asked me to stop by the grocery store and pick up a gallon of milk or something on my way home from work. Well, as soon as she asked me to go to the store and purchase anything, that was an open door policy for me to go ahead and buy myself my alcohol, and I could always, throw that right on top of the grocery tab. And I would always mysteriously lose the receipt on the way home, so I'd walk in the door with, a couple of items, and, I just spent $80 at the grocery store, and my wife's, asking me, you only showed up with milk and, a box of cereal and this and that. Why was the receipt for $80? And where is the receipt? I don't remember what I did with it. I can't find it anywhere. Meanwhile, there's a case of beer or 2 cases of beer or whatever it was sitting in my vehicle. And oftentimes I would throw in a pack of cigarettes on top of that as well. So she got hip to that and, started telling me, I don't want you stopping by the store anymore. I would start volunteering myself too and say, hey, you need me to stop by the store and get anything on the way home? Because I knew that if I could get her to say yeah, then I could stop by the store and then get my booze on top of it. But she would tell me, no, don't worry about it. I don't need anything. So then I started, trying to go by the gas station, and I would tell her I need to get gas on the way home. Or I needed to get gas that morning in my way to work. And I had to get gas. I had to drive back and forth to work every single day. But the thing is, is that I would go to the gas station, and instead of filling my tank all the way up, I would figure, okay, it's going to be $70 to fill the tank. Well, I can go ahead and put $30 in gas in here right now. And I can go ahead and buy, a 12-pack of Voodoo Ranger and 2 packs of smokes and whatever mixers that I needed for my alcohol. I can throw that right into the gas station receipt, and just tell her that I was filling my tank up. But I would always get caught doing that because, 2-3 days into it, I have to go back to the gas station and get gas again. And my wife would say, okay, you just filled your tank up 2 days ago. There's no reason why you should need to get gas again. And she would know automatically what I'd done. But there were just, all kinds of things that I would do, selling things. I would get on Craigslist or get on Facebook Marketplace. And if there was something that I no longer used anymore and I didn't think I needed it, I would go ahead and just sell it and get the cash and, buy alcohol with it. And I did that a lot. There were a lot of things that I sold. Things that I didn't even necessarily need to sell, and things I didn't necessarily want to sell. But I knew that they would sell and that I could take the money and I could buy booze with it. And it was totally untraceable. I've sold whatever it is, and I can take that cash and go buy whatever it is I need to buy. I would also, if I was... often I would do these chef's tables, and I probably did a chef's table once a week or every other week because it was a really good revenue source for the club that I worked at. We're talking like a $2,000 dinner for just a couple of people. Maybe 5, 6, maybe 8 people sometimes, but we charged a lot of money for these events. And they have the executive chef cooking for them personally. I would stay with the table, 4, 5, 6 hours sometimes, and make like, a 6-course meal, not including dessert, with like sorbets in between, palate cleansers and, little small amuse and, just crazy things. But my point to that is that, these tabs would be really high. And, the people would always tip. I'm not going to say always, but 90% of the time they would tip me. The server always got a tip, but, 90% of the time I got a tip too, and it was a fat tip. You know, I would get a $500 tip for doing the dinner with these people. And especially during COVID, because during COVID, not only was I doing chef's tables, but I used to go to people's homes and do chef's tables at their house. So talk about really putting yourself out there. You know, I had to prep all of the food in my kitchen, and then I had to load it all up into my vehicle, you know, transport all this food over to these people's houses, not including cookware and all that kind of stuff. And I would go to people's homes, and I would, you know, be their personal chef for the night, basically, and, you know, cook dinner. And every single course that I would make, I would walk out to the table and explain it to them and talk about the ingredients and where they were acquired from, and talk about why I created this dish and why this goes with that and the flavor combinations. And I mean, it was a really intensive thing that I would do. And these people would tip me, especially during COVID. I'm talking about really big tips. And when I got that money, it was all, you know, it was off the books as well. And I could take that and go buy up all the alcohol that I wanted. And that's what I always did. You know, instead of taking that money and saying, hey, let's go on a little weekend trip getaway, or, you know, let me buy that new washing machine that you've been wanting to get, or whatever it is. You know, I saw that as an opportunity to create my own little bar at my house, which is funny because there wasn't much selection. You know, it was basically just vodka. Sometimes I would buy things like gin or tequila just to kind of switch it up a little bit, but you know, I would just go to the store and buy 10 bottles of vodka with that money, and you know, maybe a carton of cigarettes or something like that, and then I was set. You know, I was good to go for a week, 2 weeks, or whatever it was. And the crazy thing about it is too, is that when I would stock up like that and buy a whole bunch of alcohol, it's not like, you know, I drank the same amount or I drank less. As a matter of fact, I drank more. It's another reason why I never bought a carton of cigarettes that often, because I noticed that when I would buy a carton, that I would smoke twice as much. And I would throw my cigarettes away. You know, halfway through, I didn't care. I just throw it out. To where if I only had a pack of cigarettes, I didn't smoke as much. And the same thing with the alcohol. You know, if I had 10 bottles of liquor stashed around my house, you know, I didn't care. I would go ahead and polish off a half a gallon and break into another one that night because it was there. It didn't matter. You know, I had more, plenty more to go. and I would also, you know, make drinks for other people. I was just wasteful with it because I had so much. But, you know, once again, you know, here I am getting these nice big tips by doing these chef's tables, and I would take all of that money and blow it. And it's just crazy to me, you know, all the extra cash that I could have taken and done something productive with it, and I didn't do so. You know, I used all of that money as a means to drink. And the reason being, it's not like I just wanted to be selfish with my money. It's just that my wife would not allow me to use our money to purchase alcohol. So, you know, if I got, like I said, a big tip, I didn't see that as extra money. I saw that as money that I could use to buy alcohol, as crazy as that is. I just saw it as, now I have $500. This $500 is for me to buy alcohol with. And that's all I would spend that money on. You know, it's absolutely insane, you know, the amount of money that I spent on booze. And then not to mention, you know, like I said, I would get on like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist and sell things in order to be able to buy my alcohol. You know, I would leave work sometimes, you know, to go meet someone and sell them whatever it was that I had for sale. And I sold all kinds of different things. For the most part, it was a lot of old kayaking gear and things like that I had that I wasn't going to use any longer. You know, and I would sell those things off, ship it off to people. As a matter of fact, at one point I had an eBay account that I was selling stuff on. And I would go to like yard sales. You know, I'd leave work or go to work late on a Saturday, go buy a yard sale, buy up some things, and I'd turn around and list it up on eBay. But I sold a lot of things that I had around my house on eBay. And every single last bit of that money went to alcohol. And I can say that 100%. Because every time that I got my money from my eBay through payment, it went to my PayPal. And I had a PayPal card that I used. And I didn't use that card but for anything but to purchase alcohol. That is the only thing I used it for. And all of that money went, down my throat. And, not only did it go down my throat, but it also went down my throat and damaged all my organs in the meantime. So all that hard work that I was putting into trying to sell these things, using my free time to get on eBay and list. Not only, when you're on eBay, you're not only listing, you have to take pictures, list the stuff. And this was back, when smartphones weren't really as big of a thing. So I had to use a camera, upload the pictures to my computer, take those pictures and then use them for the listing and then write out the whole listing. And then on top of it, you got to package the stuff, ship it off, wait. You have to wait a certain amount of days for them to receive. And then once they've received, you've got to wait a couple of days before you get access to that money. It was a lot of work to just make money for my alcohol. And I went to work and worked 60 plus hours every single week. So on top of working that much, here I was using a lot of free time listing and selling things on eBay just in order to make money for my alcohol. And it just bothers me sometimes because I think about the amount of work that I put into that just to waste it on booze. If I had taken the time and effort that I put into doing those types of things, and maybe tried to start my own business back in those days, who knows where I'd be at the moment. I could be so successful because I had the drive, but my drive was in the wrong place. My drive was just that I wanted to acquire alcohol. I wanted to get intoxicated. That was my main driver in life. That's all I cared about. And, it's just sad to think about how much hard work and energy that I put into just trying to get intoxicated when I could have been taking all of that hard work, energy, time, money, and investing it into something that would have came back and paid me for years to come. But instead, I wasted it all away. And last but not least, one of the most embarrassing things about all of this is that, I used to go around trying to get change. I'd wake up on a Monday morning and realize that I didn't have any way of purchasing my alcohol that day. I was completely broke. And I would spend the whole entire morning digging through every single thing in our house. Every single couch cushion would get flipped over as I dug through every crack in the couch, every crevice, trying to pull out quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies. I'm looking around underneath of all the couches looking for quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies. Any of the chairs that have cushions in them, I would pull those out and look. I would go into the laundry room because my wife always had like a little cup or a jar or something that she would put the change in that she would find in people's pants pockets. I would look through there was a drawer in the kitchen where my wife would often put change if she found it. There's a little place in our kitchen that she keeps like spare pens and pencils and rubber bands and things like that in, but she always would throw change into that as well. There was an old coffee can that we kept in our closet that my wife would collect change in. That she was trying to use it in order to be able to like purchase something extra for us. Maybe she was going to take that money and use it for us to go on a trip on a weekend, or maybe she was going to, saving up all that change to buy a new piece of furniture or whatever it is. She always had this little collection bucket that she would just collect all the change in. I would often go and get into her change and take it. One time I was going through my closet digging around looking for change. And, my wife's one of those people that she holds on to everything. And over the years, she's bought a new purse probably, once every 6 months or once a year or something, she gets a new purse. but she would keep all of her old purses. And one day I was going through our closet trying to find change in some different places, and I just happened to pick up one of her old purses to move it when I was looking for something else. And when I shook it, well, when I moved it, it shook, and I heard the change inside of the purse jingle. And it was like jackpot. My wife had, after all these years, she just threw her change in her purses. But she never, when she would get a new purse, she never took the time to get all the change and all that stuff. She would just take the important stuff out of her purse and left the change and everything in there. I guess she was maybe planning on getting all the change out at some point and putting it in her big collection jar or whatever. But each one of those purses was full of change. I went through and dug through all of her old purses, took all of her change that she had, and used it to drink alcohol. I was at the Coinstar machine all the time. There was one in our local supermarket that I would go to, and they always put those things right at the front of the grocery store. So there you are, there's people all at the registers trying to get their groceries, and here I was just dumping change into this thing, making all this racket and noise, only in order for me to get some money for me to go purchase alcohol. Or I would go to my local bank, and they had one of those Coinstar machines in there as well. And here I come in there with, a big Ziploc bag or a Walmart bag or a big jar or whatever it was. And I'd go over there and start dumping all this change in there, making all this racket noise. Everybody's looking over there at me as I'm doing it. And then at the end, it prints off a receipt, tells you how much money that you have. And I'd have to take that up to the register or up to the counter and tell them, I want to cash this in. And, they took a cut, too. My bank took a small cut. But if you went to, the grocery store and did it, I think they took, something like 10, 20%. It was a good chunk. So if you got $80, they took 20 if it was $100, which is a large chunk of money just for some change. And it's not like you're trading out, It's not like you're giving an old cell phone for money or something like that. I mean, you're trading money for money. It's just one's in coin form and one's in paper form. And to pay that big of a percentage because I wanted the money then. I could have taken the time to take that money up, roll it all up, and take it to the bank. I wouldn't have lost a penny if I had done so. But instead, I didn't care. I wanted my money right then and there because I needed to get my fix that day. It's just absolutely insane to think about all of the crazy things that I've done in order to acquire alcohol. Because for so many years, like I said, I couldn't use our joint card. I had to come up with all of these ideas and schemes, and I never stole from anyone or did anything like that. So don't get me wrong there. Nothing like that ever happened. But in the meantime, I did. Collect a bunch of change, sold a bunch of stuff. Any extra cash that I ever got, from anything, I took that money and put it towards my alcohol. And there were many times I would get a bonus check, and before they started direct depositing my bonus checks, I'd get a bonus check and I would take that bonus check to the bank and cash it because it was untraceable. At the end of the year, my wife would see on the when she was doing our taxes that I made more money than she saw, and I would have to hear about it at the end of the year. But I was willing to take that chance. I was willing to have that fight with my wife because she was going to be upset. But I was willing to deal with that because that's later on down the road. Right now, I need my fix. Who cares about the rest of it? Just right now, I need to get what I need to get. And the point and the reason I'm talking about this today is, I'm not bragging about any of these things that I've done, not by any means. As a matter of fact, it's very embarrassing. The reason I'm talking about this today is it's another one of those reasons to why you are sober today and why you're not going to go to the store and get that drink or go pick up that substance or go do whatever it is that you're going to do. Because as well that you probably, I can't say for certain, but I'm sure you've done something that you didn't want to do in order to get alcohol at some point in time. Like I said, go to the gas station and say you're filling up your tank of gas and getting a 12-pack of beer or whatever it is, or going to the grocery store. That back when I was a drinker, you couldn't really do this in many stores, but you can do it now at basically any store. And if I still was a drinker, I know for a fact I would do this, because I always hit no on the machine whenever they ask this question. But if I was a drinker, I definitely would have taken care of this option. But it's when you stick your card into the the card reading machine, and you enter your PIN in, and then the next thing you know, it shows you your total, and then at the bottom it'll say, would you like cash back? And then it'll give you the option of no, and then it'll give you the option of like 10, 20, 40, 60 bucks, whatever. If that had been an option at all the stores like it is now, I mean, you can go into a Dollar General and get cash back now. Basically anywhere. You can get cash back at the gas stations now. You could not do that back in the day. But if that was possible back then, I know I would have done it all the time, because I needed the cash so I could go to the liquor store and get my alcohol without any trace. And I don't know who in the world I thought I was fooling, because, at the end of the day, when my wife came home, she knew as soon as she walked in the house that I was intoxicated. My wife used to tell me all the time, as soon as she walked in the front door, that she could smell it, that the whole house smelled like liquor. So it's not like I was hiding anything. And then on top of it, I was in the bed passed out when she would walk in. Or I was sitting on my back porch, talking real slow, slurring my words, my eyes were crossed. I'm like, if I was talking to you as an individual, I would be looking over here. My eyes would be over here like this, as I was, looking like this at you talking. It didn't make any sense. I don't know who in the world I thought I was going to fool, but I wasn't fooling anybody but myself. And like I said, the reason I'm talking about this today is a reminder of why you're sober, and why you're not drinking anymore, and why you're not going to do that any longer, and why you want to stay sober. Because it truly is just not worth it. You don't want to go back to that again. You don't want to go back to, trying to scrounge up change. And another thing I forgot too is going through vehicles, going through the ashtray in the car, pulling up the mats in the car and digging around looking for change in there. Just anywhere that I thought that I might be able to find it. I would look. There was a drawer in our kitchen where all kinds of miscellaneous stuff would get thrown, and a lot of times change would get thrown in there. I went through each one of these places every single time, just looking for change. And, like I said, I just wanted to talk about this today as a reminder, to remind you of why you're sober. You don't have to worry about waking up in the morning and, crawling around on your hands and knees, looking underneath of the couch and underneath of the bed, and digging around in the laundry room and all kinds of different places trying to scrounge up change just so you can go get a bottle. And to go get the bottle that never, you might find enough money to go get a pint that day, and you go buy that and it's gone within 15 minutes, and then you're trying to figure out how to get more money to go back and buy more, because it's never enough. It's a never-ending cycle. It just never stops. We can just never fully scratch that itch that we have. We get that first couple of drinks in us, and we cannot stop until we pass out. Or I know, at least for myself, that was the case. And I am so glad that I don't live that life any longer. If I don't have any money, I just don't have any money, and it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. I've got something to drink. I've got water. And, if I've got something to eat, I'm fine. I don't need anything else. The only thing that I do need to make sure that I have is my medications. And I just want to make sure that, I do keep up with all of that stuff. I do need to have the money to get my medications, which, just like I was talking to my wife about this just last night. Just this month, we've spent $900. Just this month, $900, and that's just in co-pays and in medications. $900. Talk about a reason to get sober. And speaking of that, I just want to just throw this in here real quick, just for anybody that's one, because I've had this question asked of me quite a few times here lately. I've had people ask me if I'm on disability. or if I'm on Medicaid, and I am not. I am not on any disability. I don't get any kind of government assistance or anything. And I'm not on Medicaid either. I am on, we pay for our health insurance. We have health insurance that we pay for every single month. We pay for our family. And like I said, I'm not on disability or anything. I do not get any government assistance whatsoever. I don't get any assistance from anything whatsoever. Everything that we have, we pay for. Like I said, just this month, it's been $900 in just co-pays and just medications alone. That's not including what we pay, like monthly for my hospital bills and all that kind of stuff. And I owe a lot of money in back hospital bills from, previous visits that I've had. But, like I said, I've had that question asked of me a couple times here lately. And I had somebody a while back was telling somebody in the comments section, I had someone ask a question in the comments, and someone hopped into the comments and started telling this other individual that I don't pay for anything because I'm on Medicaid, and that, and I collect disability and all this kind of stuff. And I had to tell that person, unfortunately, that's not the case. I am not on disability or Medicaid or anything like that. So please don't tell people that, because that's not the truth, and far from the truth. Like I said, we pay for everything out of our pockets. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there and just clarify that real quick, because like I said, I have had some questions about that here recently. But other than that, guys, like I said, I just wanted to talk about that today. And I think that's about it for today, guys. Let's stay sober just one more day. This truly is one day at a time. And, let's wake up tomorrow morning and we can try it all over again. If you're recently, you recently got sober and you're brand new to this, sometimes it's not, one day at a time. Sometimes it's 1 minute at a time or 1 hour at a time. However you have to break this down. Like I said, if you have to break it down hour by hour and go, I'm just going to stay sober until 4 o'clock. And then 4 o'clock gets here and you're just going to stay sober till 5. Tell yourself whatever you have to in order to stay sober and not go back, because that is the most important thing. Protecting our sobriety and our health are the most important thing that we can do for ourselves. It truly is. So, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I really do appreciate it. And until tomorrow, I will see y'all then. I love you guys so much. Bye-bye.